Am I the bad guy for hiding my true personality by always wearing a wig at work? So I'm 21, female, recently starting working at the corporate job, and it's been around 3 months. I started dyeing my hair since last year, and I change the color like every 2 months. However, I have always showed up in my workplace with a long black wig, and it doesn't look fake at all, since I'm sweet Asian with natural black hair anyway. The issue arose when one of my colleagues, whom I have become friendlier with, added me on my Instagram. He saw pictures of me in my shorter violet colored hair at the concert. When he saw me the next day in person at work, he was a bit confused, as I had long black hair again. He made a joke like, "You didn't tell me you had a twin sister. Was that her on your Instagram story last night?" I replied, "No, that was me," and I told him I'm wearing a wig right now and I always have it at work. He asked me why that was necessary, and I just said, "I don't know. I think I like to make a certain appearances at work and keep it separate." He said that's way too much work and started gossiping about it with a few other coworkers. They said I'm going way overboard to hide my true personality. Some of them started calling me Miss. Uptight whenever they see me. I also dress in a more formal style than others, so that's contributed to the name as well, I guess. I asked them to stop and they only made it worse and more defensive. I guess I could just stop wearing the wig and show up normally, but the thing is I really like the way I dress and look at the work. Plus, I will be out of there in a few months anyway. I sort of regret adding him on my Instagram. What do you think about it? Am I the bad guy about it? Am I the bad guy for airing out my bio-dad dirty laundry in front of his friends? I'm female, 26, hi. I'm not close with Nathan, aka my bio father. I don't have very many memories of him in my life when I was younger, and the ones I do have aren't great. We had some substance issues, and he wasn't always known my mother. So the distance was really for my well being. He cleaned his act up, got married, and had 3 kids. I don't know the kids, but I've spoken to his wife once or twice. I know social media doesn't tell all, but from what I've seen, he seems like a great dad and good husband. I'm really happy for him and his family. He contacted me about 7 years ago after my mom died. It was just to offer his condolences and ask me if I need anything. I rejected his offer to help me with burying her or anything like that, and I ended up going to school abroad on a scholarship, so I didn't ask him for any financial help later or either. We had some contact, but not much. Mostly he'd say happy birthday, happy holidays, and I'll say thanks, but there were occasional conversations. I had a baby in April of last year, and my husband and I finally got around to flying back to the country that I'm from in order to show up daughter where I grew up. I know she won't remember this trip, but it's important to me that she meet my mom, even if it's just her headstone. One of my mom's old friends ended up telling Nathan that I was in town, and he ended up calling me and inviting me to eat at a local restaurant. My husband encouraged me to go, so I did. When I got there, it was awkward at first, and we made some small talk for a minute, but there few of his friends ended up walking in and coming up to us. They started saying how much my dad bragged about me and my siblings. Now they've been dying to meet his kid who moved to another city for school and etc. One of them said how nice it was that my dad was finally going to be able to meet his granddaughter. And Nathan said how excited he was to do all the things with her that he used to do with me. I must made a face because Nathan asked what was wrong, and I said that I don't remember any of the things we used to do together because we only started talking again when I was 19, after my mother died. And before then, he was either intoxicated or just never around. He said that I was making him sound like a bad dad, and I said, "You seem like a good one to your kids, but you weren't my dad at all." I left after that, and he ended up texting me later saying how crappy it was of me to just throw his past mistakes out there, especially in front of his friends, and that I could have picked another time to air out our history. I haven't responded to his text. So, also, all I want from my father is honestly, that's it. Him fronting to other people that our distance with one another is somehow mutual or not fault of his own is what bothers me. I could forgive him. I want to forgive him. But I can't forgive him for something that he has never actually apologized for, and apparently hasn't truly acknowledged either. Also, some quick info. I didn't accept his money or help with my mother's funeral, because it felt wrong to let him use his money to bury the woman he emotionally and physically mistreated, to put it nicely, for years. The good times he is reminiscing on aren't things I remember. I don't know if they happened. All I have are my memories, police reports, and the commentary of others who know about the situation and were there at the time. So, what do you think about it? I'm at the beg God for not taking in my son and his family. My ex-wife and I adopted our son when he was 6. We had been his foster parents for 3 years and we wanted to make it official. He met his wife when he was 18. She knew he was adopted and she thought it would be good for him to get to know his biological parents. Over the course of the next few years, my ex-wife and I were slowly pushed out of his life. When they got married, we only received a wedding invitation. We were not part of the wedding party. His biological parents and their spouses sat at the family's table. We have not had the opportunity to meet our granddaughter, and she is nearly 3 years old now. I'm sad about this situation, but my ex-wife is heartbroken. I hate to see her hurt when all she did was try to be a good mom. I can honestly say that I'm not a fan of my daughter-in-law and I wish she had never come into our lives. Recently, they have run into financial problems and they lost their home. My son's job is in the city we live in, and his biological parents and his in-law all live in other cities. We called my ex-wife to ask if they could stay with us while they go back on their feet. I said no. My ex-wife wants to, but I refuse to be used. He had been distancing himself from us for 9 years now. The only reason he called was because he's desperate. I don't think I owe him anything. I offered to pay for whatever it cost for him to move his family to the city where his real family is. His wife called me to scream at me. She said that I'm abandoning my son and grandchild. I said that since he didn't think of us as parents when they got married, and had a child, then they should not think of this way now. Then I blocked her. My ex-wife says that I'm being too harsh and that I need to forgive them. But here's the thing. I don't think it will change anything. All that will happen is that they live in our home, and then they abandon my wife again as soon as the chance presents itself. Also, Edith, we have removed from his biological parents because they were very young, and it was a good situation. If they had been older or more stable at me, sure, they would not have severed their parental rights. Sorry, I added in my post to make it more clear. His mom and I are divorced. She is in an extended care facility and he cannot live there. I kept our home. I'm still friends with her and we see the kids together as a family. I still care for her deeply, but her condition wasn't something she wanted me to deal with. Our son didn't even know we had separated when he called her. So, any bad guys are here? Write in a comment what you think about it. I'm not the bad guy for telling my best friend, sister-in-law, the true reason for my divorce. I'm female, 31. When my sister-in-law married, 32, in uni. We were assigned flatmates who really enjoyed cooking and baking together and became best friends. She actually introduced me to her brother John, who I'm dating and eventually married 9 years ago. We have 2 kids, aged 3 and 5. Mary was thrilled for us. She had a close relationship with John and remains best friends with me. John is very intelligent and a bit competitive in nature, so he naturally went into an intense career field. Unfortunately, he turned towards alcoholism to cope with an intense job. He started seeing a therapist who helped him identify his triggers. He drank less, and then he quit therapy thinking he was fixed. He started drinking more again after a while. He did the find a therapist, control his drinking, quit therapy process 4 times over 5 years. Each time he'd make promises and agreements. We had 2 kids along the way. The first before I realized how serious the drinking problem was, and the second after he agreed to quit completely and get fully sober. He went back on that promise and said he wanted to be in control of his drinking and only have 1-2 drinks a week. He never got completely sober. He'd flake out on promises to the kids and me. He'd go out with friends who encouraged him to drink and have 2-3 drinks and then start buying bottles of vodka and gin again. After the 3rd time he quit therapy, I gave him an ultimatum: get sober or I was leaving him and taking the kids. I followed through with it. Mary and I stayed best friends after college, but John asked me to keep his drinking from his sister the first time around and didn't want her to think he had a problem. He was my husband, so I agreed if he worked on staying sober. When I divorced him, it appeared out of the blue to Mary and their parents, who couldn't understand why I would up and leave her brother and adamantly take the kid on letting him have visitation. Mary blamed me for the divorce and wanted to end our friendship too. So I told her the truth, that I love him and still do, but I wasn't willing to spend the rest of my life and ruin my kid's childhood setting ourselves up for disappointment over and over again when he wouldn't stay in therapy or stay sober. Mary was horrified after I told her about everything. She got very emotional when I admitted to her how many times I let myself get excited for plans her brother made with me or the kids, only to be flaked on when her brother poured himself a drink after work. She wants to give John a piece of her mind and ask him to get his shit together. John now extremely upset at me for spilling his secret that promised to keep because Mary's image of him is no rubbish. And his parents are disappointed in him too. I think I had a right to explain myself to my best friend. And I no longer had a promise to keep after he broke his end of it. So, am I the bad guy after it? Am I the bad guy for not going to my husband's funeral to support my children? My late husband and I have 4 adult children, but the youngest is 23, but the rest are in their 13s and all have children and families and live far away. My eldest lives over 400 miles away. My husband recently passed away, fairly unexpectedly. He wasn't ill to our knowledge and died from complication resulting from his diabetes type 1. Though 64 is seen as old, it is shocking and tragic. I'm not a funeral person. My mother was a huge hypochondriac when I was growing up. In this day and age, she will be diagnosed with some sort of mental disorder. I expect that she was never really with it when I was a child. Multiply times a week my entire childhood up until I was 13 or 14, I was dragged to funerals of strangers. Every funeral my mother saw in the paper or heard about from friends, she would take me and my siblings too. Even it was completely inappropriate to be there. She lied sometimes if it was an intimate funerals. We were cousins of the deceased or the family of their dead friend. We had spent hours there doing nothing at all, and to be presented with death. So much as a child was quite emotionally distressing. Many funerals we went to had open caskets, as we lived in a quite Catholic area. It haunted my dreams as a child. A long time before he died, my husband told me once that he wouldn't be offended or upset on me if I didn't go to his funeral as long as I'm mourning him in my own way, but he still wanted to have one. Before his funeral, me and my children shared a meal, and they assured me it was okay not to come and their father wouldn't be upset, and they just wanted me to do what was best for me. After the funeral, I received angry emails from friends and relatives of my husband's, especially his mother, who is under 19s, saying I completely disrespected my husband and I abandoned my children who were inconsolable at the funeral and traveled all the way for it just to be let down by their mother. My children have told me that I have nothing to worry about, that they weren't crying because I wasn't there, but the emails keep flooding in, calling me selfish and telling me I'm letting my entire family down and asking if I really love my husband. It's very distressing, and I'm wondering, should I have sucked it up and gone as a courtesy to my husband's family? What do you think, guys? Am I the bad guy about it?